Morning, chaps. Thank you very much for joining us. This week, Adam and I are delighted to have both Adrian Fulman and Dave Tooley, who are both precision ag specialists at Tuckwell's John Deere dealership. So, chaps, without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourselves and give everyone a bit of background.
Yep, my name is Adrian Fulman. I've been with Tuckwell's 27 years this year. Quite a time. Obviously been doing precision ag since about the year 2000 when it started. So yeah, right from the early days of the brown screen right through to current Gen 4 technology. So yeah,
good stuff.
Yeah, I'm David Tooley. I've been with Tuckwell's 30 years. Similar to Adrian, been doing precision stuff since it came out, so 2000, 2002. So yeah, dabbled in that a little bit, and now doing it more full time now since 2012. So yeah,
busy stuff.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. What we wanted to do this morning was just have a bit of a catch up, because we've known each other between Adam and I and you guys for quite some time, but we're just very excited about the new Gen 4 integration with Gatekeeper. And we just wanted to touch on that with you. But first of all, I think it's probably worth just sort of reiterating and just sort of covering the benefits of linking the office and the cab. Adrian, I know in particular we've sort of done quite a few pre-harvest setup days with mutual clients. But from your point of view, what do you see as the benefits in making sure that the office is linked to the machine and vice versa, bringing information back from the machine?
It just obviously makes life in the office way easier if you can set up, like we've spoken about in the past, have a work plan and a structure, obviously within Gatekeeper. Then with the history with John Deere, and then that links just so nicely into the Green Star displays that can then set up the combine, so the operator experience is spot on in the cab. And especially on the new displays, we'll see that setup with the crop type and variety then has a knock-on effect. It sets up the combine setting, all the sieves, fan speed and everything comes from the initial setup. So it's a kind of seamless process all the way through. And obviously if you record everything correctly and bring it back, it's the same in the other direction, straight back into your work plan. So yeah.
So we've already got the within the Gatekeeper devices section now. We've got the new Gen 4 node up and running, but do you want to just talk us through? So we'll still need to export as a GS3 profile, won't we, to be able to get into a Generation 4 display? But that will populate, as I understand it, the same as it would have done, or very similar to on a GS3 display. So you have your boundaries, your setup folders, client farm fields, etc. All that sort of list and product lists and things, I'm assuming.
So the client farm and field list will be very similar if anyone's coming from an old 2630 display. Then you will have the combine in this case will be already set up because it's more linked in with an ISOBUS header and a combine, so that will probably be already set up on the screen, which we'll probably see in a minute.
Okay. So would you recommend? Sorry, Adrian, just thinking then from our users' point of view. Normally they used to, if they've been using this for a while, they've probably got their tractor units and their implements nicely tidied up on a nice list in Gatekeeper. Is that not so important then to make sure we're exporting the tractor units and implements, because it's the ISOBUS link from the header is already populating all that information? So it's really more just getting the field boundaries and the other information out of Gatekeeper into it. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be the critical thing. Clients, farms, fields, that will obviously pull in any boundary data if you've got that, which is obviously pretty critical for mapping.
Yeah, and guidance lines. I've been asked for a few customers about getting guidance out to combines this year, so people are starting to be a bit more get involved with that, and people are now more and more equipping guidance of various bits and pieces on their combine, where maybe not RTK, but certainly they want to share AB lines with the other tractor units in there. So that will go out. It used to go out within the profile. Will that still be accepted on the import?
Yes, yeah, the guidance lines would still be there as well. Like you said, more people are looking at control traffic, this sort of idea, so that those guidance lines become critical. So yeah, that would be there.
That's good.
Yeah. Then you've obviously got your crop types and varieties. Still obviously the same within Gatekeeper. You've got the John Deere Link crop type, so that's obviously be critical for the setup.
And we're quite topical. We're talking about this in July, and for this particular chat, just having a look at the harvest aspect of data recording specifically. And so, as Adam says, starting from Gatekeeper, an operator would still create a work instruction or work plan, but they would just leave that residing in Gatekeeper and export those resource files from Gatekeeper out to the John Deere terminals. How does that sort of work for a customer who's actually then sort of importing that data on the terminal? Is the behaviour fairly similar and common before in terms of handling that data?
Do you mean in terms of actually plugging the USB stick in and at that physical stage there?
Yeah, exactly. Once the bum's on the seat in the cab, what does that process look like? Does it differ from previous terminals, or is it fairly similar?
It's a little bit more intuitive, because the way the new Generation 4 display is then laid out, it kind of guides you through that process a little bit more clearly than the previous display. So as soon as you plug the USB stick in, it would then, after a few seconds, detect that and then ask you what you want to do. So you can then import data from that stick, and then it structures it all out, so you can tell what you're bringing in, whether it's just boundaries or AB lines or and that sort of thing. So
gotcha. Okay. And I think you might have a couple of examples just to sort of put on the screen, just to sort of show that sort of interface once once the customer is sort of working with the data from the export.
Yeah. So if I'll just share my screen here. Just let me know it's all. Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, that's on the screen. Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so the combines nowadays on the Generation 4 display would have 4 factory default run pages as such. And just a quick brief overview, you've got the side arrows here. So there'll be a harvesting one, a work monitor, performance page, and a combine settings. So if I scroll back one there, so yeah, we'll start from this one here. So a critical button that I usually point people to is down the bottom left where it says work setup, this one here. And this takes you shortcuts to the real sort of key areas that you need to make sure are set up. So the top left here, you've got a shortcut to the actual client farm and field, and you see that the broad structure is very similar.
And this would be imported, would it, Adrian, from a GS3 profile exported from Gatekeeper?
It would, yes. I mean, I've just simulated here a single client and then a single farm, single field.
Okay.
You could then manually add in new fields here, just like you could on a GS3 display, but that list should be pre-populated from the Gatekeeper export. And if you've got boundary data, it should then show you the nearest few fields to your current location. If you're in the corner of 2 or 3 fields, it will always then give you a selection, a shortened selection of what you need to pick. So once you're okay in there, this bottom left is then the combine and header. So this should be set up already for you. From being on the machine is all these days, as long as the multi-docker is plugged in on the side with the header. We get 1 or 2 questions where people have rung up saying, the header settings don't work, and it's just obviously got to make sure the header is actually on and docked on and plugged in.
Sure.
And then
just one question, might be a bit of a daft one, but but amongst our mutual customers, are there potentially people who've got the larger Generation 4 displays in a combine that's not running an ISO header? So are there going to be occasions when you might want to export the implements and track unit details out via the profile, or is that not really going to be a scenario that the customers would face?
I think all the headers these days on certainly the new S series combines would be they have an ISO ID number as such, and it brings some header information in What you quite often find is if you haven't got a header in, that it will default to say 9.144 meters, which was a 30-foot header, and then as soon as you plug your own header in, it then configures the right width and breaks it up into sections for the overlap control, which obviously helps keep your yield map tidier as it decrements the header when you're going around. So all of that information kind of happens when you plug the header in.
Okay. Well, there are ways that, on the odd occasion that might happen, we can alter the width of the plots once it's in Gatekeeper anyway. So on the rare occasion that there's nothing there, that wouldn't be a deal breaker necessarily. I notice you've got the your crop and variety there. Would that have come through if we'd exported a profile as well? Would that be set up automatically?
That should come across. I mean, again, in this simulator, I've just literally put in the crop type and variety manually. It should be in the list. So if I click on crop here, there was a default in the simulator of wheat white. I just added wheat Euro winter. There is a default crop list in here, like would have been in the Gen 3 display. So if I go back to here, you can see a myriad of different crops in here.
Yeah, okay.
We don't obviously there'll be some common ones. So rape, industrial rape, oil will be in there, or wheat. If I go down the bottom, wheat Euro winter is a good one to pick for any of the the main varieties there. And then you've got a variety list in here again. I just picked Skyfall, but your variety list should be in there
from the export. Yeah, or you can
varieties. I just clicked on that one I set up manually and just entered that.
And I suppose for a lot of customers who have already been using Gatekeeper with the Gen 3 terminals, that a lot of this setup's already done and dusted. It's just a case of pushing it back out to the new terminals. Yeah.
I mean, once they've just got used to the different place you find this information, the Gen 4 display, it's really really simple. It's quite well clearly laid out, and they don't seem to have a problem. It's just that initial difference between the Gen 3 display and this new Gen 4. So
yeah.
Perfect.
And just
onto the
go on.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I was just going on to the documentation. Sorry, Adrian. You go first, chap.
Yeah, just quickly, like I pointed out earlier, where you set up the crop type in here, this has this real knock-on effect with the combine, the rest of the combine setup. So it's critical these are kind of correct. And then if I click on it, it starts to take you into all of the settings for all the sieves and everything that's related to the crop type that you've put in this box here. So that's pretty critical. But yeah, sorry.
No, that's a key point, especially for our customers who are going to be exporting it. If they really ought to then, if you are a Gatekeeper user, really have a little bit of a tidy up maybe and go through the setup crops and varieties list in Gatekeeper and just make sure these crops are matched correctly.
Yes.
If it's going to start impacting what's going on actually on the machine, that becomes a little bit more critical perhaps than it was in the past. Yeah. Just documentation wise, is there anything, obviously it's great we can now get yield and forage into Gatekeeper. As applied, it's going to be coming down the track very shortly, but very topical at the moment. If we're out there, we exported what we need to export to get going. Any tips for good, accurate recording of documentation that we're going to bring back into Gatekeeper?
It's more, I suppose, on the combine. It's more a physical thing. Make sure the combine record stop height is set correctly, like the recording switch or the trigger.
Yeah, where would we find that? That's often something that we do encounter actually, where sometimes you got one farm, multiple fields all attached to it. You have to trim them up, and guys on support have to help out trying to sort of split files up and things. Where would that be located?
Yeah, I'll just have to find that on the simulator.
And Dave, just a question for you, just whilst Adrian's sort of working through that. Are you guys finding that more of your customers are moving from the Gen 3 to the Gen 4 terminals, and is that more prevalent for harvest machinery?
Well, I think definitely now, because they're more built in now, so it's more functionality for that to happen. So, like you say, lots of people, the screens are getting older, the more modern tractors now have their capabilities within them. So there's more chance and more opportunity to gather the data now anyway.
Yeah.
More now, say, for the tractors and things that, like you say, you select your implement, it's a bit similar to where Adrian had his combine on his simulator. The tractor will be there, you add the operation within the implement you choose, that then selects your documentation. So previously where people would just shade in, now they can add just a little bit extra and start recording some data. So, I mean, for you guys, like you say, you've got the data, that's what you want, isn't it? It's you can do with it, don't you? And it's just a few simple little setups within that work setup tab, really. So
yeah. And is this Gen 4s, Dave? Are they only on the S series, or are they on the Ts as well?
I mean, currently they are in combines. They are all on all the tractors now. I think before long they'll end up on the Ts, but currently we are just still on the GS3 screen in the T series. So I think it's probably another year or so away, but it soon happens, doesn't it?
Have you got anybody using? Is it the 4640, which is the larger portable one? Is that have you fitted that into any other types of combines or any other?
There's a few. I think Adrian's done a few. Like you say, it's definitely some going that way. I think someone's running one in a new T, so he's using the Gen 3 screen just to run the combine, and he's put the 4640 in to do that side, like you say, the documentation, the green star side of the stuff. So that now he's got used to it, finds it far more intuitive and prefers that screen. So
yeah. I've just got the sequence of buttons here. I mean, if that helped with that record stop heights, if I just share my
let's have a look at that
again. Yeah, so I'm just going to drag the quick buttons down. So there's a couple of ways to get in. So if I just show this, these are the solid sort of buttons that are along the bottom of the display. So you can either, there's a dedicated header button.
Okay, yeah.
Or you can get to it through the main menu of the display. But if I click on header, I'll just get rid of that. It'll bring up some initial information, and actually where you've got the platform type. Then you've got this record stop height, this work trigger here. So quite often from the factory you'll find it says 50%. I'm always a little dubious with that, so I'd always just make sure, set it your current cutting height, lift it up at 8-10 inches or so, and then just click the set to current height button, and then that will set that figure at something else, and then that should be your switch for recording. If you don't have that set correctly, I mean, on the old display it used to say process brain with recording off, and then you find the customers happily combining up and down. There's no yield map being generated, and obviously you can't invent a yield map that just hasn't been recorded in the first place. So it's quite critical to the whole thing working. So then when it is actually recording, you should down the bottom left see this work auto should go green, little green dot there. So that should, it's actually then recording correctly on the screen. And then on here you would see a coloured yield map actually coming out the back, of the combine. And
tell me, how are you finding the sort of training process with your customers on this new terminal? Is this something that's been, is it more easily and readily adopted by users, or are you finding you're having to sort of work around the current sort of movement restrictions and train customers via online means?
Yeah, obviously this exceptional circumstances this year, we've had to rejig our combine program quite a bit. We had some more bespoke days for smaller numbers of customers, obviously, cautious of social distancing. We adapted the training somewhat, so someone was in the cab with an iPad, filming what was happening in the screen, and then we could show it on a TV down the side. And also the use of the simulator, like I just have done there, we can actually then simulate to a wider audience with a bigger television rather than all trying to cluster into a combine cab. So yeah, you just have to think on your feet a little bit and, you know, work it with the numbers of staff that are available, you know, there from the farms.
Sure.
Some customers we've just gone directly to them and just done almost a one-on-one, so we're just in the doorway of the combine and it's just literally one of us with the single operator. So you just have to treat each case as it comes, really. So
but the actual JD Link terminals and being able to do RDA helps as well, so
yeah.
you can keep people rolling.
Yeah,
Their screen, it's
Perfect.
it's instant help, really, isn't it? It's, you can configure those screens so much, it's handy just to be able to see them, so you know their layout, because they're probably customised into their preference. So
Yeah, it's always interesting when you know, challenges throw themselves up and technology can actually be adopted and used to its best ability, and yeah, making the best of a challenging situation.
and just one interesting little feature I didn't know existed, and our customers might not either, is that sometimes it probably be useful for support if you're contacting our guys for support, or yourselves as well, I'm sure. But I didn't realise you could take a screenshot from the display itself. I believe there's just a little button in the top corner or something. You depress that, take a screenshot, and it's on the memory stick, which you could obviously then email to support if you've got any problems to support the error or whatever it might be, or if we're having problems when importing into that Gatekeeper, etc.
Sure, yeah, if I just share my screen really quickly again. So if on the actual screen itself, if you push and hold in this top left-hand area.
Just anywhere up there?
Yeah, anywhere up in that top left-hand corner for about 3 or 4 seconds, you'll get the picture sound of a camera taking a picture.
Yep.
And that will have literally taken a picture of whatever's on the screen, and it will be available for upload onto a USB stick. If there's a particular problem, it only shows up once in a blue moon on the screen, or you know, something's not quite working. So yeah,
that's really useful, because, for example, if people do find that they try to export from Gatekeeper and the crops don't appear, for example, they could take a quick screenshot of that, email it into support guys, and then we can investigate it with you, what might be going on. So yeah, it's a really useful tool. That I can't believe I missed it. It's there. It wasn't there in the old 2630s then?
You could. There was a little button around the back. You have those up and down buttons on the back and a tick and a cross, and there's a small button about the size of an eraser on the end of a pencil. So you could push and hold that for a second or two, and that would take a screenshot. Again, you could export that via USB. So yeah,
all these little gems. Perfect.
Yeah.
So, chaps, everything's gone well. We've sort of done the export from Gatekeeper, so we've got that key bit of information that we need on the terminal, plus everything set up as required on the terminal. Harvest is going well. The yields are looking fantastic. Data now needs to be imported back into the office. In the past, we've always said to our customers, look, you know, it's always advantageous if you can, you know, get some yield maps and then start trying to bring those back into the office just to make sure everything's working as planned. Obviously, there's working practices around that, and when things go good, you know, obviously farming and the practical side of it takes precedence, but always a key consideration to make sure everything's going well. After the event, though, in terms of sort of providing that data back, similar process to before. The data sort of captured off the terminal, it's ready either on a USB stick to be drawn back into the office.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, even though the combines might be geared up and sending data wirelessly back to the John Deere Operations Centre, it's still there on the processor in the cab in the terminal. So again, we'd pop the USB stick in the side, and again, it would auto pop a window up and say, you know, what do you wish to do? So then we would just back up the data, and then again on the Generation 4 display, it does give you a few more options. It's a bit more intuitive. So then the critical item you want to bring back in is work data. It will obviously then ask you if you want to then re-export things like boundaries, guidance lines, all that sort of thing. But if you if you haven't changed anything, there's no necessary point bringing those back in. So the key tick box at the end of that line would say work data, and then I'm going to a USB stick, ready to bring back in through the new node that's been created. So
yeah, the critical point we always used to sort of try and make people aware of, and I know you both come across this on farm, is on the 2630 displays, people export from Gatekeeper, and when it imports, kind of does a clean down and then imports just what's on the screen. So if there was stuff missing, that potentially could go disappear from the operator's view. Is that a similar process now on the Generation 4 displays?
Sorry, I think I missed the
Oh, so when you used to import onto a Generation 3 display, it would do a kind of clean itself down and only import what was on the USB stick. Is anything kept within the terminal now, or when you do an import, are you overwriting what you've already got on the display?
Okay, yeah. When you export the yield data, if this answers the question right, it will leave the data on the display, so you don't end up losing things that are on the terminal.
It'll end up stacking it, really. You'll have a list of fields. If you added some more, it would add to those. It may duplicate. You may get 2 or 3. It might. But it's not erasing it now. So it's you've still got to be careful in one way, but it's helped in a way that it doesn't lose what you've currently got in the screen.
Yeah.
There's a separate cleanup procedure for data on the display. Once you put everything in and you're happy with it, it's still a good policy to then just do a kind of data cleanup on it. Otherwise, internal memory does start to clog up with historic data that's already safe. So.
Yeah, and I see Ben's just sharing one of our documents there, and actually this goes back to that point about trying to do this little and often, because people might not be aware of what's been going on with the technology of the Generation 4s, etc. But it's all built around the new ADAPT framework, which is what we've had to build a plug-in to be able to code into that and to understand that new language. But part of that is, and it's on the release notes here, is that there's a lot more data stored against each point now, which means that import process could potentially start taking a little bit longer for our users once it comes into Gatekeeper. So I think just to reinforce that point earlier about, if you can, little and often through harvest, rather than potentially building it all up and trying to bring everything in at the end. I'm sure you give a similar sort of advice to users as well.
I think definitely I've sort of had things where their screens had 30,000 files on them.
Yeah.
An extreme case, but not getting on and doing the next.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
Well, chaps, it all looks very exciting. I like the look out of this layout of the screen. Looks really sort of updated and easy to drive around.
Does look very intuitive on there, actually. Yeah, it looks like even one of us could maybe get on there and do something.
Yeah, that's good. It's all good. Yeah.
Good stuff. But I think that conversation's highlighted actually that sort of normal working practices still continue. Okay, the terminal handles and receives information and exchanges that with the office and Gatekeeper in a slightly different way. But actually, the ultimate aim is to use that accurate data to capture that as quick as possible and bring that back to a farm management system such as Gatekeeper in the best and easiest way, and use that data for whatever that farm has in mind.
Obviously, the Generation 4 displays are now hearing in our self-propelled sprayers and in the tractor's command center. So that same process would populate right through to all the different platforms, getting data to and fro, and obviously then what you do with it within Gatekeeper, obviously creating different maps and methods of fertilizer prescriptions, all that sort of thing.
And that's not far down the line. The as applied, the rest of it, foraging yield to start with, which is obviously great for now. Nice and good, timely release of that feature for our customers and both our customers. And then also as applied coming in as we go into the autumn, will be there to come in. So like you say, just keeping those same good working practices. And I'm sure people are fed up of hearing from certainly myself, and I'm sure Ben and anybody else at Farmplan, they talked about making that harvest work plan. Still do it. Now I know we haven't got the job function on the GS4 screen as it stands, but if we've got this nice structure of data to bring it into in Gatekeeper, it's all there on the Generation 4 display. It's all nicely recorded. You're getting that right information, and it's all, from what you were saying the other day, Adrian, all very nicely calibrated up. You've got extra options for extra sensors and things in the tanks. We've got real accurate, good data that we could be bringing in. We can still put it in nicely away, so still create that work plan, because we're just going to put it in and file it on the right shelves on there. So we've still got this workflow management, and just like you say, those same good principles, which will apply to just the good transfer, the good use of that data. And one thing we didn't mention is if people are working, if they've got JD Link and the wireless data transfer enabled and they're using the Ops Center, just a simple procedure, isn't it? I think from getting something out of the Ops Center as a file that can be imported into Gatekeeper. There's just a simple download process in there. I haven't looked on there for a little while, but before we go, do you want to just mention that maybe?
Yeah. I mean, the combines these days will be then more drip feeding information in. I think due to the the volume of data and the need for the more kind of immediate viewing of work data. If they've had all the latest updates on it, then should have the data sync capability, so it's then syncing that work data a lot more regularly. And in the operations center, there's a files manager, a little icon where you can view the setup files as they come across. So that's what you would then pull across into Gatekeeper.
And that's a JDL file, am I right in saying that? Is that what a user would be looking for in the files manager?
Yeah. It depends on the particular naming structure that each customer has set up themselves. So it may have the machine serial number, and then the field, and then a date, or there's about 5 or 6 different ways each of the files can be named.
Okay.
But yeah, those would all populate in, and you can then structure that on a kind of month-by-month basis, so you can sort of filter the list down to particular machines. If you're running a large fleet of 15, 20 different tractors, combines, all sort of foragers, you can then start to narrow that down.
Yeah.
Quite easily in the Ops Center. So.
Perfect. So yeah, very good. So like I say, that little and often job actually should be fairly easy to manage them, because obviously we've got the connection into Gatekeeper, the wireless data transfer, so we've got that link by your API there, so we can import that directly from the Ops Center into Gatekeeper without the need for the USB transfer. So doing things on a daily basis should be hopefully straightforward to manage, but it's certainly there, and yeah, good practices to continue.
Well, chaps, that sort of runs us out of time now, so we'll wrap things up. But thank you very much both for your time. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you. We'll share those documents that we just quickly put on the screen, so you've got those for reference with mutual customers. And if anyone's watching this after the event and they've got specific Gatekeeper questions, well, they can contact Farmplan via the normal means, and via the website there's full communication details on there. Chaps, if anyone's got some questions for you two, what's the best approach for them to take?
Yeah, obviously we each have our own mobile phone number. I mean, I'm based down at Great Dunmow with my colleague Aaron as well, who is more staff by licensing, and we're both pretty au fait with the operations centre. Dave is up at our Whirlingworth depot, so he's contactable via there, or he's got his own mobile number.
The AMS email.
And there is a general AMS email address as well, for those slightly less urgent inquiries. So yeah,
perfect. All information is on the Tuckwell's website.
Yes, yeah, correct. So just tuckwell.co.uk and follow the links through. We could also do remote support for people if they're just stuck with anything, as yourselves do as well. So that's really valuable, especially during lockdown. We can hook into people's laptops and just guide them through this transfer process. Occasionally people just get stuck for one reason or another, so that really helps. So probably the same from your team side as well when you do it. So
good to know.
Fantastic.
Well, thanks again for your time, and enjoy the rest of the day, and I hope all goes well for harvest for you guys.
Yeah. Okay. Let's catch up.
Thanks for coming along, guys.
Okay.
Good chat.
Cheers now.
See ya.